Wait, Quakecraft is low-key fun again. Welcome back everybody to another episode of Hypixel Quakecraft. Lately there's been a bit of a trend in the community on making videos on ideas on how to revive various Hypixel game modes. I've seen uploads from people like TrainerDario, Jopig, Vaes, SoLike, and Laser Penguin on ideas to revive different game modes like Skywars, Bedwars, Bridge, etc. And some of those ideas have been a bit more serious than others. I think most notably Cheetahh and Jopig spent like most of their videos talking about how they should gaslight everyone into playing Hypixel again by claiming that the game is fun, which is a really funny idea, but I personally don't have to gaslight anyone because Quakecraft is already fun. And so my message to you guys today is please play Quakecraft. Please, 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 please. I've been so good. But jokes aside, I thought I'd take this opportunity to kind of hop on the trend and give some of my suggestions for things that I would like to see on Quakecraft. I'd like to preface this by saying that the community has been actually working on like a proper update proposal. It's not done or posted anywhere yet. And once that full proposal is out, I'll probably make my own separate video talking about that and promoting it and asking you guys to upvote it and stuff. For now, I thought I'd just address a few of the problems that I personally think are some of the biggest currently with the game, because the last time we got an actual like real content update in Quakecraft was 2018. That was 6 years ago. We are due. We are beyond due for a proper update. I guess if you want to include map updates, that happened in early 2019, and then since then there's been like a couple bug fixes and then seasonal cosmetics, but I don't count those as content updates because there's no new content. So I'm cautiously kind of hopeful that they will eventually do some update in the next like year or two, though at the same time I am kind of scared because for one, they've just announced for a couple different game modes that they are no longer updating it whatsoever. Like back I think last year, maybe 2 years ago at this point, Blitz SG got an update and they announced that it will be the final ever content update. So that game is just permanently in its current state, will never change ever again, which I obviously don't want to happen to Quake. Although that being said, I mean, I've been playing it for like 4 years and I haven't really had any major problems with it. Another reason I'm worried though is because Quakecraft has had a history of terrible updates. And listen, right, I wasn't there for pretty much any of them. I would consider myself a new gen, even though at this point I am like one of the older players technically. But like when Quake first released, right, they had a few minor updates and then they announced that they're going to do Quake 2.0, which is obviously a pretty big deal, right? And what did they add in Quake 2.0, the monumental update? Basically, they added a couple maps and made the shop way more complicated than it needed to be. And that was about it. Realistically, the only massive gameplay change we've ever had was dashing, which is a great update. I love dashing. I could not imagine playing Quake without it. I think they added it in like 2015 or something, and it was the same dash for everybody. You could do it every 2 seconds. Everybody dashed the same distance when they did it. But then for some reason, years later, they came back and were like, you know that great feature that everybody loves? What if we just stuck it behind a paywall? So now by default, you can only dash every 4 seconds, and you have to buy your way back up to being able to dash every 2 seconds. And we make dash incredibly weak, so it barely even boosts you anywhere, and you have to buy the power back as well. And it was just like an unbelievable coin sink for no reason. Literally everybody hated it. Thankfully, they recognized that it was at least partially a mistake, and they went back and removed the dash power upgrades, so now we only have dash speed cooldown. But I really do genuinely think that that should be removed as well, and it should revert back to how it used to be, where everyone just got 2-second dash. Because if you haven't played Quake before, I know that 2-second difference probably doesn't sound like a big deal, but it really does make the default dash cooldown of 4 seconds feel so unbelievably useless, especially on bigger maps. Stuff like Sero and Freist were some of my least favorite maps when I was first starting out with the game because they were so big and it would take me so unbelievably long to get to mid on 4-second dash, whereas basically as soon as I finally was able to unlock the max prestige of dash, I fell in love with the maps because I was finally able to get to mid. It didn't feel like I was spawning in outer space and like having to travel for a minute straight just to get back and find any players. You know, I could just dash back to mid right away. It was such an upgrade. And speaking of upgrades, when the game first released, the fastest gun was 1.2, and then over the next few updates, they slowly added 1.1, which was great, and then they added a 1.0 gun, which was again pretty fantastic. And maybe this is a hot take, but that's where things should have ended. Unfortunately, that's not the case. They went ahead and made guns shoot faster than a second with the 0.9, which is already unnecessary, but then they went and took it a step further with the next update after that one and tried to add the 0.8, which it's just getting ridiculous at this point. Like, it's just a trend of making the game more and more kind of pay to win for no real reason. And the community literally at the time told them, we don't want the 0.8. And so instead the admins were like, oh, okay, fine. Well, we'll compromise and add the 0.85 instead, which is like basically the same thing, but whatever. And so because literally every update just made the game more and more pay to win each and every time, a lot of people, especially in recent years, have been calling for them to just completely remove the shop and give everybody max upgrades. And I, for one, actually don't want that, which probably sounds surprising, but I'll explain why. I don't think that they should completely remove the shop. In my opinion, I think the best way to go about it would be to make the shop significantly easier. Like I mentioned earlier, give everybody the max dash of 2 seconds, and then instead of the current default trigger, which is 1.3 seconds, just make it 1 second. It's so much more intuitive and easier to understand telling someone that they can just shoot once per second. And although I did say that I don't think they should have added the 0.9 or the 0.85, I do like the fact that they add a real genuine goal in the game, because although I know I did call them pay to win earlier, it's actually more like play to win, because they're really just locked behind achievements as opposed to purely being coin based, which is great. I'm so glad it's like that, because otherwise it literally would just be pay to win instead of play to win. The 0.9 only takes about 250 kill streaks, which if you're like insanely cracked at the game, you can get that in a few thousand kills, or if it takes you a little bit longer to adjust to the game, it might take you upwards of like 10 to 20,000 kills. It's a really good item to work towards in the early game, and I think it's a really good way to promote players to play the game a bit more consistently in order to achieve it without it being such a massive number that it seems completely unachievable. Then the next unlock you have is the 0.85 trigger, which takes 100,000 kills. Now, when I first started playing Quake, I never thought I would reach that number, but as I slowly made my way to the 0.9, by the time you're there, it actually seems so much more achievable, and you'll realize it's actually not that crazy of a number. You can do it in a month if you're really dedicated to it. Personally, I have never done that, but back during quarantine and lockdown and stuff, I was getting like 60k to 70k kills in a month, so it's totally doable. And I love the fact that it's an end game goal that really gives you something to work towards and also genuinely rewards you with a better gameplay experience. Because I'll be honest, if I had to grind through 100,000 kills and all I got was like, I don't know, a golden Steve hat or something, I know that's like a ranked reward, but I would not care. Probably nobody would care. Nobody would even wear it. But anyways, it really is rewarding getting to 100,000 kills and finally being able to claim your 0.85 trigger. I think it's a good system. And I really do think that the default gun being 1 second and default dash being 2 seconds would be a great way to balance everything out, because a good player can very easily win any game with only the 1 second trigger and 2 second dash, even if your opponent has the 0.85 or something. It's a very negligible difference, and that's what I like about it. It's a slight advantage, but not one that's just going to make you overwhelmingly unbeatable. I also want to just mention that despite everyone always going, oh, the only reason I'm losing is because I don't have the best trigger, the tournament gave you your chance to play the game with the best trigger, and you probably still didn't finish in top 100. That being said, if they were to remove the shop, I wouldn't really care that much, I'll be honest. I used to be kind of vehemently against it for all the reasons I just went over, but as in the most recent TNT update, they completely removed the shop from all of that, I kind of came around and I was finally like, you know what? It wouldn't be the end of the world. I would prefer it if they didn't, but if they did go ahead and remove the shop, I think that would still be a good choice to make if they did it right. And here's what I mean by that. Please, for the love of God, do not remove the shop and just give everybody the 0.85 trigger. Quakecraft is supposed to be a fun, engaging, and fast-paced game mode, and I feel like that was the idea behind making triggers faster and faster every update. But unfortunately, what happened is we went past the point of the game being fast-paced into it just being completely chaotic when multiple players are using the 0.85 trigger. There's gunshots constantly, you die a million times per second. If a player decides to just stand in a random position on the map and hold right-click, they can basically create like an impassable barrier unless you actually know what you're doing and how to get around them and shut them down. Basically, if a bunch of nons get their hands on the 0.85 trigger, the game will just devolve into a completely chaotic mess, more than it already is. But really the point I'm trying to get at is, if they do decide to remove the shop, which I don't think is a bad idea, I believe that they should actually remove the 0.9 and the 0.85 trigger. And I know that for a lot of Quake mains, that is an incredibly hot take, and I completely understand it. Like I said earlier, unlocking the 0.85 is a massive time investment and kind of like an end game goal for a lot of players, and now I'm saying that you should just get rid of that? And my honest answer is yes. The current state of the game when there's multiple players using the 0.85 is that it's just too chaotic. There's already literally zero feedback when you die in the game. For new players, you basically join a game, die a million times, the game ends, you don't even know what happened. And by slowing the game down slightly, but not too much, I think a lot of the chaos would be able to be avoided. I think that it's just enough to make it so that there's not like a million shots being fired per second, but it's also not a massive downgrade for those players who have been using the 0.85. Anyways, that was one of the biggest points that I've kind of wanted to talk about for a while, but I do think that another massive drawback of the game is that there's literally no explanation. It should have a tutorial of some kind. Maybe I can make that its own video. It goes without saying that there's a lot more that I think could be done to help save the game, and once the community has fleshed out a proper update proposal, I will go more into depth into that in the future. But really what I'm trying to say is, wait, Quakecraft is low-key fun again. Please go play Quake. I would appreciate it a bunch, and it's pretty much the only reason I make videos on this game, because it's a game that I love, and I always hope that I can inspire people to try it out for themselves. Get out there and give it a shot. Thank you for watching.